Hi everyone, and welcome back to the Shanna Show. So in today's video, I'm just gonna be going over like a brief look at the large wave of bookish influencers and bookish influences, just very brief. And then I'm going to be going over 5 things that I think we should de-influence within the bookish community, and then 5 things I think we should influence in the bookish community. So this was inspired by Creativity Diaries, Diaries of Creativity, and her series on de-influencing stuff within the bookish community. So go check out her channel and the video she's done on it. And if you'd like me to talk about this more, please let me know down below in the comments, because I definitely think it would be pretty fun to talk about. And I have included some links, like 3 links that I personally looked at when I was looking into this a little bit more. And if you have any other resources that you want to share with people, leave it down below in the comments. So basically, when I was reading up and researching stuff, like, it's a very mixed bag as to, sorry for any clicking, I'm turning on my wax warmers. It's a very mixed bag of what bookish influencers on social media have influenced. It's like a very mixed bag. Some good, some bad, some things that probably shouldn't be influenced, some that should be, and quite a bit of neutral stuff. Like bookish aesthetics, I personally think the aesthetics part is more neutral. Overconsumption of books and bookish overconsumption of books and bookish products, that is kind of more mixed of good and bad. And then where you buy books and bookish products as well, again, another mixed bag. Like how it's influenced the publishing industry and bookshops, bookstores. So like, it's a very mixed bag, because you'll see a lot of articles out there that say that bookish influencers, especially looking at the surgence and resurgence of book talk, saying that it's saved the publishing industry, which I'm kind of like middle ground about, because it's like, on the one hand, yes, especially when it's in regards to Barnes & Noble, and that is a bookstore. But like, saving the publishing industry as a whole is where I'm kind of a little bit mixed, because it's like, you still have quite a few people out there who are readers, and it's not like publishing was just gonna die out. Like, yeah, publishing was tanking, but it's not like it was gonna fully die out, because the people who are readers and have consistently been readers, they're not going to just all out stop reading. Like, yeah, they might take breaks from reading, but no one's really going to stop reading all out. Again, if you're looking at people who have been consistently reading, whether it's on and off consistency over the years, you know. So I don't think there is a major concern with the publishing industry going out of business. So it's just a question of how the publishing industry approaches DEI, which I think needs to be common ground. There needs to be DEI, guys. There needs to be DEI. And DEI includes, honestly, everyone. Not just the obvious, but it includes the less obvious options. I'm not going to get too political right now, but I'm personally not too concerned about the publishing industry because of that, unless they just start undoing their DEI policies. But again, I'm not gonna get too political, so there's that. And also, like, in regards to saving bookstores, like Book Talk, I definitely feel saved Barnes & Noble. However, I do think that there needs to be more emphasis on smaller local independent bookstores that aren't chain bookstores, or at the very least we shouldn't just be focusing on Barnes & Noble as the only book retailer. I think Barnes & Noble is the best alternative to Amazon, but it's a situation where it's like, if you have to use Amazon, if you have to use Barnes & Noble, then that's what you have to do. But if you can go to a local independent bookstore, or maybe a smaller chain bookstore, there's one bookstore in my area that I think has a couple of stores across the country. I think it's called Annabelle's Book Club. And then there's also Books A Million, which has quite a few stores in like the south middle part of the country. And then there's, what else? There's, why am I blanking on the name? The Ripped Bodice, which has a location in Los Angeles and then a location in New York, I believe. I believe it's the same store or same owner for both. So try to shop local and or independent bookstores that aren't Barnes & Noble. But again, if Barnes & Noble is your only alternative to Amazon, then it is what it is. And again, if Amazon's your only option, then it is what it is. But I think we really need to be focusing on independent bookstores and not just the large chain corporations. As much as I love Barnes & Noble, like, we need to focus on smaller, more independent stuff. And locally owned stuff too. So my opinion, excuse me, in a sense, I guess I could be like a book influencer, because I do talk a lot about books here. I haven't used my Bookstagram in a while because I'm trying not to use Meta as much, so I haven't used my Bookstagram in a while. And I haven't done too much book talk recently, just because of like the whole debacle with TikTok. I'm also trying to limit my usage of TikTok, especially if it is now owned by Meta. So I might start posting book talk related content on my main TikTok page. I have a main one, and then I have a crochet talk, and then I have my book talk, but I'm not using the book talk specific account as much because I forgot my passcode. And again, if it's owned by Meta now, it's like trying not to use Meta as much. So we'll see. But like I was saying, I could be considered a bookish influencer because I talk about books here. I've talked about books on other platforms, and like, I'm kind of neutral overall about bookish influencers, again, because I kind of could be considered one. And also too, it's like, I feel like talking about books on social media platforms is a great way to connect with people and to connect people with books that might be good for them. It's not always the best thing. There's always going to be drama, as with any niche subgroup on any social media platform. There's always going to be drama. So it's like, it's just a matter of how we respond to the drama, and it's not always the best. So there's that. And as for like one little topic before I get into the 5 things to de-influence and 5 things to influence, is that like my whole thing with book talk only reading smut, and this kind of correlates to a video that Call Me Chris did. I'm not going to talk too much about that, but if you're in the group, if you're in the theory, if you're believing the theory that bookish social media platforms, specifically book talk, only read smut, only read spicy books, then you are very wrong about these social media platforms only reading a certain type of book, only reading a certain genre. Because like TikTok especially, it's very prevalent on TikTok, but with any social media platform, the videos that you well, videos on TikTok, videos here on YouTube, reels, and posts on Instagram, the content you engage with is the content that's going to show up on your For You page, on your suggested, whether or not you follow those creators. So if it's not just watching too. If you're engaging in one form or another, especially multiple forms, if you're engaging with a certain type of content, that content is going to show up more on your feed. And if you're constantly watching, like if you're on TikTok and you're on BookTok and you're constantly watching TikTokers, BookTokers talk about spicy books, and engagement means watching a video through to the end, sharing it, whether it's in a direct message in TikTok or sharing it as a text or sharing it to Instagram. If you're sharing it, if you're copying the link, if you're commenting, if you're saving, that's all engagement. And if TikTok sees you doing one or more of those things, then it's going to start suggesting more of those videos, especially because when you're doing that, when you're sharing it, you're automatically watching the whole thing through, and then it probably starts over, and depending on how many things you're sharing it to or how long your comments are, it might run through a couple more times, especially on TikTok and also on Instagram as well. Less so here on YouTube, but again, it's like the same kind of concept. If you're sharing it, if you're engaging with it, you're gonna see more of those suggested on your suggested page, on your For You page. And like with Call Me Chris, like, again, I'm not gonna talk about it too much because I do like Call Me Chris, and I think this was like a minor blip, and I don't think it was, her comments were definitely unwarranted, but I don't think it was as big of a deal as a lot of people made it out to be. But with Call Me Chris, my thinking is that she was watching those videos all the way through, and she was sending them to Selena, and maybe to some of her other friends, and maybe to Umpuville, to Caleb. Like, she was probably engaging with them in more ways than one, watching them through, saving them so she could include them in her video. So it's like, with her doing that, she's going to see more spicy book talk. But that's not the only thing that BookTok reads. Like, I was on BookTok a lot, and I was talking about so many other books. I would talk about spicy books, but I was talking about so many other books. And again, if that's what you're engaging with, that is what TikTok will show you. TikTok sees that I'm watching a lot of videos on Epic the Musical, so TikTok is going to show me more videos using Epic the Musical sounds. TikTok saw that I was on Hunger Games talk for a while, so it's showing me more Hunger Games videos. It saw that I was watching a lot of Mamma Mia videos, so I'm going to be put on Mamma Mia and ABBA TikTok. It's what you're watching and what you're sharing and what you're commenting on that TikTok is going to show you, that Instagram will show you, that YouTube will show you, that Pinterest will show you. You know, it's how social media works. And again, I do like Call Me Chris, and I do honestly think that that video was coming from a somewhat genuine place, but it was what she was engaging with on TikTok and not necessarily what she should have read, which, you know, happens to the best of us. Like, there are books I definitely shouldn't have read, and I shouldn't have engaged with videos talking about that, because then I see more of those videos talking about that one book that I didn't like and that I shouldn't have read. So then it's like, it's that kind of a situation, you know. And I do understand where she's coming from, but she read the very dark romance of the romance and spicy genre, which there are worse books to read than that, and there are worse books to publish than that. So like I said, I do think it was coming from maybe a naive spot, and a spot from maybe not fully, I'm blanking on the word, but she hadn't fully grappled with the idea of purity culture and how demeaning that can be, and maybe hasn't worked through it within herself yet. So it's just like, it's very much a situation where it's like, I think it was coming from a somewhat naive place, and it wasn't coming from a bad place or a negative space. So that's just my take on what happened with Call Me Chris. But again, the whole point of that is if you're engaging with spicy book talk, you will get spicy book talk. If you're engaging with dark romance book talk, you will get dark romance book talk. And there have definitely been moments where spicy book talk and dark romance book talk have let the book talk community as a whole down. There have definitely been those moments. So it's just like, I understand, but at the same time, it's like, if that's how you're seeing the community as a whole, then you're very wrong. So that's all I'm going to say for that. And as for what to de-influence and what to influence, I'm going to start off with the de-influencing so we can end this video on a positive note with what to influence. So I do have this listed down below in the description, but I will be going into a little bit more detail about it within the video. And both of these lists might correlate with other videos on this topic about what to de-influence within the bookish community and what to influence with it. It might correlate with those kinds of videos. So if you see anything that overlaps with anyone else's videos, it is what it is. Like, I've watched a lot and there's going to be some correlation at some point. So first thing we need to de-influence is the big book hauls and big book unhauls. And I know that there have been a lot of people talking about this, but if you at any given moment can't afford a big book haul, go for it. Like, go for it. And if that's something that you've been saving up for in one form or another, again, go for it. But don't be fooled into thinking that you need to be only doing big book hauls to be considered a reader, to be considered bookish. And also on the flip side, I'm perfectly fine with unhauling books. Like, there are many good places to donate your books to. It's just the idea of, like, for me at least, the idea of really large book unhauls, that doesn't sit well with me, because it's like, there's a part of me that's like, you spent so much money on all of those books. Even if you buy those books secondhand, you spent a lot of books, a lot of money on all of those books, and now you're doing like a 20, 30, 40 plus book unhaul. Like, I can understand it from clearing up space, but at the same time, it's like, you spent a lot of time buying up those books. So it's like, again, it's like, if it's something you need to do, then it's something you need to do. But again, don't be fooled into thinking you need to be doing big book hauls or big book unhauls to be considered bookish or reader. And again, if it's something that you've been saving up for or that you need to do, then go for it. But that's not like a indicator of someone who's truly bookish or really a reader. That's not an indicator of that. The only indicator of you being bookish or a reader is if you're reading. You don't even have to own a book to be a reader. If you're borrowing from your local library, if you're borrowing from Libby or Hoopla and you're reading the books, then you're reading and you're a reader, even if you do not own a book. So the next one is for de-influencing is that you need to be reading 100 plus books a year. Now, both of these or all of these are all of these things for de-influencing are, in my opinion, unattainable for the average person. I consider myself an average person. Like, I make a good amount of money. I don't make a whole lot, but I make a decent amount of money that I can live upon while also having a little bit of spending money. And this is my bookshelf. I have one bookshelf. This one right here is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It has 5 shelves. I do have a 360 bookshelf that I had to pack away And I don't know if I'm going to put it back up, just because with the one I got, it's a pretty decent 360 bookshelf, but it does lean a little bit if you put too much weight on it. And even if you don't have the same amount of weight on it, it'll still lean. Once it starts leaning, it'll keep leaning. So I'm looking at like potential other options for a 360 bookshelf. So there's that. And I don't have a lot of books. I am trying to build up my collection because ideally I would like one day to have a little personal library, but like that is not attainable for the average person. It's not attainable for me right now because I'm an average person on an average salary, and I have other bills to pay. I have other stuff to pay for, and my money has to go elsewhere a majority of the time and not just books. And I'm in the States, and a paperback can cost anywhere between $10 to $16, $17, $18-ish dollars, give or take. Like it can cost anywhere in the 10 to 20 range, depending on the paperback. And hardbacks can cost anywhere between 20 to 30 plus, again, depending on the hardback and the publisher and the size of the book. So like having something I think is really unattainable for the average person is only doing hardbacks. And yes, hardbacks can be really pretty, but if that's all you're getting, then that can be unattainable, because again, it's like $20 to $30, sometimes more. And it's like, that's unattainable in my eyes and not feasible for the average person. But getting back on track, like a lot of these are not fully feasible for the average person. But getting back to point number 2, reading 100 plus books in a given year. Not everyone reads at the same pace, and even if you have 100 people who can read at the same pace, read the same number of words, sentences, and pages in the same amount of time, even if you were to get 100 people in the same room who could do that, every single one of those people will not be able to read the same number of books in a year because of their varying lifestyles and what they have to do for work or what they don't have to do for work. So it's like, it's unattainable to be reading 100 plus books a year, and it's unattainable to read 100 plus books a year to be considered a reader. If you're reading 1 book a year, then you're a reader. If you're reading 5 books a year, you're a reader. Even if you only read half a book in a year, you're still a reader. So, and reading pace is so subjective to the individual, again, based on what pace they read and everything else that's going on in their life. So it's like, it's not attainable to have 100 plus people reading 100 plus books in a year. So it's perfectly fine if you don't read 100 books in 1 year. It's perfectly fine if you don't read 50 in a year. It's perfectly fine if you don't read 10. Again, if you only read 1, that is perfectly fine. So the next one is reading 500 plus page books. Where's my one? So I am currently reading The Fear of the Gods, and this one, I think it's a little bit shorter than book 2, but this one's like 530-ish, give or take. And I am barely through it. I started it it's currently April right now when I'm recording this, like end of April. And I started this maybe like 2 weeks ago, and I'm not that far in because I have so much other stuff to do and so much has been going on. So it's like reading if you can read 500 plus pages in a book, that's great. And you do not have to read it fast. You do not have to read it in a week. You don't have to read it in 2 weeks. Take your time reading. So again, read at your own pace with what you're dealing with in your life. The next one, the 4th one, is only sticking to one genre, or the opposite, only being a genre omnivore, as I'm calling it. Now, this seems to go up and down in trending topics on Bookish social media. And I find it kind of funny because in my personal experience, what up until like high schoolish for me, like I was reading a lot of stuff, like, well, not a lot of stuff. I was reading a lot of different genres at least. And then high school, I was only reading history and history nonfiction. Well, I was only reading historical nonfiction, history books, and mythology. That's what I meant to say. And I did that up until like 2018-ish, which is when I started reading historical fiction and started reintroducing other genres back into my reading palette. And something I would never do, and something that astounds me that people do, is saying you have to stick to one genre, or again, the flip side, you can't stick to one genre, because I've heard both. And it just astounds me because like I never did that. Even when I was reading only historical nonfiction, like I just imposed that on myself. I was like, I have to stick to this one genre. I only imposed it on myself. I never told anyone else that they only had to stick to one genre. Like, and it always astounded me even then when people would say that they had to stick to one genre. Like, why are we telling people to read? So it's like, you don't have to stick to one genre if you don't want to. You don't have to read a bunch of different genres if you don't want to. You can avoid genres if you want to. If people are telling you have to read a certain genre, you don't have to if you don't want to. I very rarely reach for sci-fi. Knowingly, at least. I very rarely reach for sci-fi. Knowingly. And it's like, it's just not my genre. And that's perfectly fine. So, you'll have genres that are for you, you'll have genres that aren't for you. And it is what it is. Number 5 of things to de-influence within the bookish community is buying a full series in one go, or before picking up the first book, or before finishing the first book or books. And this one I'm kind of like middle ground on, but I do think it is something we need to de-influence. I'm only middle ground on it because I've done it a couple times. Like with the Bloodstorm series, I did it. I bought book 1 and 2 before I read book 1, and then I bought the third book when I was in the middle of the first book. And I've done it for authors I like, authors that I had read before, and they had a series coming out, or they had a series out that I didn't know about, and then I bought the full series. But for me in that instance, it's because I knew I already liked the author and that I would most likely like that series. But I think we need to de-influence this because, again, books are a lot of money. We do not need to be buying a lot of books to be considered a reader. We don't need to be buying a lot of books to be considered literate, or to be considered like culturally profound or something. I do think we need to keep our reading diversified and make sure we're reading from multiple backgrounds, and make sure that if we're reading books of certain areas, that those books that we're reading are by authors of those areas. Like if you're reading books centered in Africa, we should be reading books by African authors. If you're reading books about LGBTQIA plus characters, it should be by LGBTQIA plus authors, that kind of thing. So I do think we need to make sure that our reading is diversified. But again, we don't need to be buying a whole bunch of books to be considered readers or literate, like I said. So, and we don't need to be buying full series. Like, it is okay to buy the first book, because if you figure out you don't like it, then you'll have to get rid of the whole series. Whereas if you just buy the first book and figure out you don't like it, you just have to get rid of the first book. So, as for 5 things I think we need to influence, so going to the positive, going to the flip side, the first thing, I talked about it before, but shopping small and local and using local libraries. So, shopping small and local, going to small local bookstores. I think it's called Annabelle's Book Club, like I said. At least the one here in California. I think it's on Ventura Boulevard, I think in Studio City, I want to say. It's Ventura and Laurel Canyon. Or that's the major cross street. It's not quite on that corner, but there's a CVS, a Barnes and Noble, there's a Starbucks, and then there's a little street, and then there's a paper source, and then Annabelle's book club somewhere in there. It's pink. I've been there. I've been to that strip of Ventura a lot. So there's also a really good Meccano's ice cream nearby. It's off of Laurel Canyon, but it's not in Ventura, but it's really close by it, and Meccano's is so good. Meccano's is only in California, but they do ship across the country. So I'm very picky with my chocolate ice cream, and I only like Meccano's chocolate ice cream and Jenny's chocolate ice cream. And I know this is a little side quest here, but most other chocolate ice creams aren't chocolatey enough for me. I'm very picky with my chocolate, and I'm very picky with my chocolate ice cream. And most, like I said, aren't chocolatey enough where it's like you can taste the milky part of it. And like I like dark chocolate, so that might also be part of it. But Meccano's and Jenny's are the only ones who've really gotten the chocolate flavor right, in my opinion. So yeah, anyway, back on track. So shopping at small and local bookstores and using your local library. And if you don't have a local library close by, I mentioned Libby and Hoopla earlier. Those are really great resources. You don't have to select your local library for Libby and Hoopla. You can select a different one. And I know the Los Angeles Public Library is pretty big and has a pretty big selection as well. So if you need to choose the LAPL, Los Angeles Public Library. If you need to choose that one, go for it. New York is also pretty big, so if you need to choose one of those, choose a bigger one, but use your local library. Use libraries just in general. So the next one is small TBRs, and maybe even redefining what a TBR is. And when I say small TBRs, it annoys me to no end seeing people with large TBRs, because it's like, on the one hand, yes, we, like, every single person could consider every single book a part of their TBR. But it's like, that is, like I talked about with the de-influencing ones, like, it's unattainable for most people. And for the average person, it's unattainable having a large TBR. And having small TBRs is fine. Having a TBR pile that is under 100 books is perfectly fine. Because anything over 100 books, like, kind of unattainable. Because it's a situation, like I said, where it's like, technically we could consider every single book that is currently out, whether it's backlisted or not. I hate backlisted. I hate that term. I'll talk about it later. But backlisted or new release or upcoming release, like, every single book could be considered part of every single person's TBR, which is very unattainable. Because it's like, oh, my TBR keeps growing, and it's like, yeah, because new books are constantly coming out, and there are so many books that are already out and have been out. So yeah, your TBR is technically endless by that standard. And for me, the reason why I kind of don't like the term backlisted is because they're like, certain books definitely don't age well and have not aged well, but there are so many books that were published, like recent releases, new releases. I consider it within like a 2-year period. New releases, like 2-year period. So like 2024 and 2025 for new releases, and then recent releases would be 5-year period. So between 25 or between 2020 and now would be recent releases, and anything before that is backlisted. And maybe because it sounds like blacklisted to me, I don't know, I just don't like that term, because it's like there are so many books published before the window of recent releases that are amazing reads. And there are a lot of authors who maybe don't publish a whole lot and haven't published recently enough to be considered a recent or new release, that like we just miss them because they're not releasing new stuff and they're not releasing constantly. And like a lot of the books that I have read and I have enjoyed have been backlisted books. So I think we need to like find a new term for that. But getting on to like maybe redefining what a TBR is, the way I've started viewing it for myself, for myself at least, is books that are on my radar. My TBR pile, the TBR in the Storygraph app that I use. I also think we need to stop using Goodreads, but I'll talk about that in another video. So books that I've marked as to be read in the Storygraph app, those are books that are on my radar. Like I said, they're books that I would like to read. Whether or not I get around to them is whether or not I get around to them. Like, it'll be what it'll be. It is what it is. If I get around to it, great. If I don't, fine. But these are books that are on my radar that have been suggested and I think I will like. And like, I've occasionally gone through it and removed books that I'm like no longer interested in and that I don't necessarily need on my radar. But honestly, I think if we redefine what a TBR pile is to just books that are on the radar, then I feel like a lot of that stress will really decrease, because it's like, hey, this has been on my radar for a little while, let's read it, rather than to be read. Anyway, that's all I'll say. The next one, number 3 for 5 things to influence, is DNF-ing books. And I know that there's a lot of people who will be like, my this, that, or the other. Like, totally valid, but there are so many things that people will say, like my OCD, my ADD, and again, totally valid. I'm not trying to sound annoyed in any way by saying that, but they'll say my OCD doesn't allow me to DNF books, my ADD doesn't allow me, or whatever it is, doesn't allow me to DNF books. And the thing itself, if you have actually been diagnosed with those things, doesn't bother me. It's perfectly valid. If you're getting help for it and you know you have it, great. But it's like, if you're using that to blame why you don't DNF books, if you're using that in a way as a crutch as to why you don't DNF books, like, that's kind of what bothers me. Because the way I think of it is, and the way a lot of people think of it, is life is too short to keep reading books that you're not enjoying. And if you're not enjoying it, you're not enjoying it, and pushing through is not gonna help. And you can look up spoilers. You can DNF a book and look up spoilers so you can know how it ended. Like, if there's a show I'm watching that I'm not liking, I'm not gonna finish it. I can look up how it ends. If there's a book you're not enjoying, it's the same thing. Okay, how did this book end? Reading reviews with spoilers. That's fine, you guys. Like, it's okay not to finish a book. And in that same vein, not having to finish a series if you're not enjoying it. This is number 4. It's in that same vein of DNFing books. If you read the first book and liked it, and maybe you're reading the second book and aren't liking it, you don't have to finish the series. Again, you can look up the ending. You can pretend like the first book's a standalone book, which we need more of in fantasy. You don't have to finish a book if you're not enjoying it. Again, life is too short to be reading books you're not enjoying. You can stop a series, pretend it's a standalone duology or trilogy, depending on how many books there are in the series. You don't have to finish it if you're not enjoying it. I need water. It is starting to get warmer in California, and I don't like it. I don't like the heat. And then number 5 for things to influence, the last one, is reading for enjoyment. And I feel like this one's kind of self-explanatory, kind of obvious, and it goes hand in hand with DNF-ing books and DNF-ing series. But it's like, even if you're like a full-time social media content creator who makes content about books, you should be reading for enjoyment. You shouldn't just be reading just because it fills out a paycheck or you get paid for it. Like, because then in that sense you're losing the enjoyment from reading, which is the whole point. Again, if you're a bookish content creator, it's the whole point. You need to be reading. And yes, in that situation, I think bookish content creators need to have more diverse readings. They need to have more of a diverse base with reading. But it's like, if you're not enjoying a book, it's okay to not finish it. And if you're reading for a hobby, then even more so. If you're not enjoying it, you don't have to finish it. If you're enjoying it, continue reading. Reading is about enjoying, no matter how you read. So I'm going to stop this video here because my voice is getting a little bit tired. So please leave your thoughts, opinions, anything else we think we need to de-influence in the bookish community or influence in the bookish community. Leave your thoughts down below in the comments. And if you want me to do more of these videos, let me know down below in the comments as well. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all in my next video.